Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from the places you are joining. And I welcome you all for this very interesting session of this conference. In this session, we are giving an opportunity to experienced as well as young evaluators to come together and share their experiences from the field they have worked on with some or the other innovations, basically. So innovation can be an approach in methodology, in technology, in interpretation of the results, and so on and so forth. In response to our invitation, we have received proposals from 3 senior and experienced evaluators and about 4 youngsters, and they will showcase their experiments. We will call them here innovators. The innovation can, I would also like to mention that the name of the session is Open Space. In addition to the above presenters, we are inviting the participants also of this session in case they want to make any small presentation on their own innovations. If yes, please write your name in the chat box so that as per time availability, we could give the platform to you also after the presentation of innovators are over. You are also requested to place your questions in the chat box indicating towards whom your question is addressed. Hope you will enjoy this session. Today we have moderator Vijita Dev Sharma. She is an independent development practitioner with over 13 years of experience in the fields of program management, strategy making, as well as monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Her thematic expertise is in the areas of child rights and child protection, education, and gender. She has worked extensively with a range of national and international organizations and enjoys using participatory approaches while conducting evaluations. A sociologist by training, Vijita brings in insights from the field and is presently a consultant with ISST as a course director for their flagship course on gender transformative evaluations. I welcome you all once again for this session, and I welcome Vijita as well. So I won't take much time. As of now, you might be waiting to see the innovations. So over to you, Vijita. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rashmi, for that very kind introduction. And welcome all presenters, all participants. Post-lunch sessions, I know can be a little tiring, but I can assure you that this open space session right now will not be tiring. We will make sure that you don't fall asleep because we have some wonderful lineup of interesting innovations, experiments by our lovely, wonderful presenters. This open space is all about sharing innovations and experiments from the field of evaluation. So personally, I'm very, very excited and looking forward to the whole thing. Each of the speakers will have 7 minutes to present. I will give a call out at the end of 7 minutes, and after that, after the first set of presentations are over, we will move to a 15-minute Q&A. So without wasting any more time, let me welcome our first presenter, Dr. Madhuri Jansen van Rensburg. Madhuri is a South African research and consulting psychologist doing research, monitoring and evaluation and organization development work throughout Africa. She is a past chair of the African Gender and Development Evaluators Network. Her passion for vulnerable groups motivates her to develop creative methods and tools. Madhuri is also a painter and papercraft artist. Over to you, Madhuri.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I think my presentation is more to get people thinking. So I would like to share my screen, but somehow, there we go. So I want to encourage everyone at the beginning of this session to think about their thinking and to encourage you to think differently about the things that you are doing. So let's get our brains started. If I can get my presentation started. So I hope you're ready to blow your own mind. So I want to start with some illustrative exercise I don't want you to overthink it at all. You don't even need to write it down. Just sort of think about what it is that you see in the following 3 diagrams or pictures. So I'm giving you 10 seconds to just quickly recognize what you can see in the 3 pictures. So 1001, 1010. Okay, so what is it that you saw? And obviously I would like to see it in the chat, but since this is only 7 minutes long, I was thinking of some possible answers. Oh, I see a lamppost, a tortoise, cell phone, and those are sort of the things that I thought you might recognize. So number 1, the typical answers would be a tree, a lollipop, magnifying glass, a lamppost, a signpost. Number 2, a cell phone or a remote control. And then number 3, maybe a really fat person lying on their sides. And if you haven't seen one, please come to South Africa. We have excellent samples for you. The point here is that we want to think outside of what we would recognize. So for instance, the first sign could be a solar energy sign. It can be children jumping on a bed for number 2. It could be a boardroom meeting or some other strange extraterrestrial that you just made up. So why am I telling you this? The first set of answers are what we call convergent thinking, while the second group would be convergent or lateral thinking. So convergent thinking is when we come up with solutions to problems, or when we brainstorm, but we keep thinking about solutions that we've used in the past. Or maybe we think about knowledge that we gained, something we studied. While divergent thinking is beyond what is possible. It is novel. It's very unusual. And in normal life, but especially as evaluators, we need both types of thinking. But convergent thinking is actually the one we use most often. But we can learn to use more divergent thinking. And what I did is this presentation contains some slides at the end with some exercises and just some fun practical things that you can do to improve your own lateral thinking. So what is divergent thinking? It's thinking, I know it's a cliche, out of the box, but it's really thinking of unusual solutions, things that you would not recognize from your own experience. Unfortunately, our brains are wired according to what we want to see. And we need to activate or make the brain aware of the other possibilities. So we need to work on 3 components. The one is fluency, which means that we want to see as many solutions to maybe those drawings or images I showed you. We also want to see that it's from different categories, that we don't keep on seeing animals or types of flowers, but that we jump between different categories. And then, of course, it has to be novel. So why is it important for evaluators to use divergent thinking or lateral thinking? And when I started thinking about this, I realized that we play so many roles that even if we just think about the role we need to play in evaluation, it already becomes very clear that we cannot just go on our own experience and our own knowledge. When we do an evaluation, we need to engage with people who might bring information to the table that is very different to our own thinking. But we also need it as we are designers. We are celebrators. We are encouraging people to celebrate their victories. We are trailblazers in that we show people what is possible. And of course, we just need to have more fun. So some applications for evaluation and divergent thinking, and you can use some of the examples that I will give if they share the presentation, it's listed there. You can use it as icebreakers when you're facilitating either a program or evaluation or the dissemination of evaluation information. Obviously, it's very important for problem solving and especially brainstorming. But we need to be careful that there's only one very important rule with this type of brainstorming, and that is that all ideas have equal value. We cannot judge on those that seems very irrelevant or strange at the moment. It's very important to say, let's brainstorm what if. And this what if is not contained within rules. So we think of a perfect future of what can be possible. We don't restrict ourselves to very realistic vision and goals. Yes, we'll get there. But in the beginning, we need to have a totally open mind to whatever people are offering. I think it's also important when we deal with stakeholder groups, especially those that we don't normally authorize to take the lead. So it's not that we just leave them out as data sources, but I've in the past years seen children become change agents in things like vaccination programs and advocacy efforts. So it opened my eyes again. And then, of course, and I know a lot is happening in Asia, especially around using local resources, both for programs, but also in doing the evaluation. So that is really my story. I'll just show you what is there, just to give you some appetizer to go and do some of these exercises. So there are some exercises. I think one of them that I can highlight is that you just take 2 random pictures and then look for similarities. So not differences that we used to, but to look at similarities. So, and then there are some of the resources that you can find in your own time. So thank you very much. I wish I was there in person.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhuri. This was really innovative and interesting. I'm sure this has given a lot of food for thought to all the participants and also the other presenters. Excellent, excellent sharing of some very creative ideas. Thank you. So I don't see any questions as of now, but if you have questions or queries, do keep posting them on the chat box. We'll quickly move to our next speaker, who's Karthik Mochan. He's a data scientist with LEAD. Karthik is currently engaged with the Solutions for Transformative Rural Enterprises and Empowerment initiative that provides technical assistance to the National Rural Livelihoods Mission and also leads strategic initiatives in the data science space. Karthik is an evaluation and data analytics expert with more than 8 years of research and consulting experience in Asia and Africa. He has conducted multi-country research and evaluation programs to assess various government schemes. His core competencies are data analytics solutions, impact evaluations, M&E, and strategic consulting. Prior to joining LEAD, Karthik has worked in research teams of Microsafe Consulting and Care India. He has worked across multiple sectors, including MSME and entrepreneurship, digital financial services, inclusive finance, and public health. So welcome, and the floor is all yours, Karthik.
Thanks, Vijita. Thanks, Vijita. I'm very glad to be here, everyone. So today I'm going to present one of our innovative approaches that we followed in LEAD, where we try to derive some, demand side insights using location analysis that will enrich our findings from the primary survey. I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Karthik, it's visible.
Yes, we can see.
Great. Okay, great. So LEAD is a LEAD is an action-oriented research organization where we aim to solve complex development challenges. We do numerous primary surveys in the area of MSME, financial inclusion, public health. Now, what we have found through our surveys is that it's important to analyze both the demand and supply side factors by studying key social issues like employment, entrepreneurship, and women economic empowerment. Just to give an example, right? Let's say we are doing a study to understand the factors that affect the growth of, let's say, women-led enterprises. So in that study, apart from studying, supply side factors like, the women's agency, the women's educational background, the women's marital status, it's also important to understand what are the market conditions. For example, how close is the main road to the place where the women's enterprise is located, or whether the enterprise has access to facilities like warehousing or transportation. So these factors equally affect enterprise growth as much as the supply side factors. Now, during our primary surveys, which we conduct in the field, we have found that we face a lot of issues with collecting demand side information from through the survey. For example, one of the issues is the accuracy of the location information. For example, when we ask the respondents like how far is the nearest bus station or how far is the nearest, let's say, main market, usually respondents give a response that's like mostly rounded off to the nearest numbers, right? For example, either they will say 1 kilometer if it's very close by, or they will say 5 kilometers, or they will say 10 kilometers. But if you analyze the data based on those responses, then you might not get the clearer picture about what are the factors that are constraining. And second issue is the awareness of access points. Like many times, the respondents might not be actually aware about some of the access points that are closer to them, maybe because they're accessing regularly the others' access points that are a little far away. What at LEAD we have been working on collecting and analyzing demand side data through different alternate sources. And one of the recent things that we were doing was using location API services provided by Google Maps. So this is a free to service up to a limit where it gives us location data of key infrastructure points in any nearby locality. I just want to show our approach to an example. For example, so we are doing a study to understand the female labor force participation in some states of India. So as you might know that the female workforce participation in India is quite low compared to other countries, and it's also on a decline in the recent years. So what we did was, so we collected supply side factors through the primary survey. Like we used data on women's agency, background and all those things, demography and everything. But what we did was, and also along with it, we also collected the GPS coordinates of each of the respondents. So we had the lat and long of the houses in which the respondents were located. After that, what we did was we collected geocoding information of major infrastructure points that are in proximity of the respondents by using Google API and Python programming language. So we focused on 4 major infrastructure points: bus stops, train stations, police station, and banks. And finally, what we did was we calculated the distance between the respondent and the nearest access points. For example, for each respondent, we saw how far was the nearest bus stop, how far was the nearest train station, etc. And then analyze this data to understand how availability and access to infrastructure points affects women's participation in the labor force. So these are some findings that we want to share with you. So this is just to give a background, right? For example, here if you see, the green bars are for urban areas and the blue bars are for rural areas. So if you see, let's say for example, first graph, right? Like almost 88% of urban people had a bus stop within 5 kilometers of their houses. But if you see rural areas, it's quite the opposite. Almost 82% of people living in rural areas had a nearest bus stop that is 5 kilometers or more far away from their houses. And you can see similar trend for train stations and banks and like police station. We have different trend. It's not very linear. But if you see other three access points, we can clearly see the trend that urban areas, people have access to more better access to infrastructure points compared to rural areas. Now we just try to cross tab the distances with the female workers participation rates. As you can see, right? For example, when we see workers participation rate with bus station distance, like women who have bus stop less than 2 kilometers have a better participation rate. Like there was around 23% of women who were working. But if you see women who have bus stops more than 10 kilometers away, then the percentage reduces 14%. You can see a clear trend where having access to bus stops have a clear effect on workforce participation of women. And you can see the same trend following for the train station as well as for bank distance. And for police station, we could not find any similar trends that's emerging. And in order to create association link also, right? Not just correlation. We also did a regression analysis where we tried to see where we took the whether the woman is working or not as an dependent variable, and we ran a regression to all the infrastructure distances. And also we adjusted the model for supply side factors like the age of the respondent, education level, and marital status of the respondent, and tried to see whether we can find any causation or association between the distances and workforce participation. And what we found was that you can see the interpretation down. Like we got quite a good significant results. Here you can see, right? For example, the chances of a woman working drops by 5.7% for every kilometer increase in the distance to nearest bus stop. Now, this is for the overall data. But if we slice and dice the data, for example, let's say we look at urban areas separately and rural areas separately, then we might find even more interesting data that might be emerging. And so this is a kind of dashboard that we prepared based on the data. So this is for one of the districts of Jharkhand, which is called Garba. You can see in the district, we collect data from 3 clusters. These are basically villages or towns. So these are 3 clusters from which we collect data. And we had mapped all the infrastructure points to them. For example, these are police stations. So these are banks. These are train stations. And the blue ones are the bus stations. And we try to analyze and see whether any trends or not. I'm just going to go to briefly show the dashboard. Yeah. So this is the Garba map that we were showing. And you can see, right, for example, so this is the main Garba town, the district headquarters, where we had quite a number of respondents. And the red color indicates houses in which women are not working. And the green color indicates in the houses the women are working. And this is the main national highway this passes through. And we have the state highways and the railway tracks and everything. So we kind of created a whole model out of this. And if you want to refer to a single respondent, right? For example, this respondent, you can see this respondent has completed till 10th education. She's currently not working. And we can see the distance to all the infrastructure points. So this is kind of a location list that we can do. So this is just the beginning of what we are trying to do. And in terms of way forward, what we want to do, so currently we see we did a individual level analysis at woman level. Next, what we want to do is, for example, in the previous sheet, you can see there are 3 clusters here. 3 clusters have different sets of participation. This are more likely to have more participation of women in labor force compared to this cluster. So our next step would be to do a cluster level analysis to identify other factors that affect female labor force participation apart from bus stop, train stations. There might be other infrastructure points that might be affecting the factors. That's something we will want to do. And also we want to understand the accuracy of the data collected through primary survey. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare infrastructure data collected through primary survey and then through the Google API and try to estimate how much error that we are getting from primary surveys. So that, in future, when we look at any data from primary survey that doesn't have any Google API data, we'll take it with a pinch of salt, right? Like this data might have this much percentage of errors. The third is, so this is a little ambitious one. So we are trying to develop an infrastructure index, a standard index where we have all the infrastructure data, like for example, how much far away is the nearest highway. Apart from the points that we mentioned, we'll try to add more indicators like availability of let's say transportation facilities, how far is the main market, how far is the district headquarters. So we're trying to add some more indicators to it and create an infrastructure index that we want to use it for all the studies that we're doing to understand the demand side factors. So that's all from my end. Yeah, Vijita, that's all from my end. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, Karthik. This is so wonderful. My God, I'm absolutely fascinated by your presentation. Extremely innovative. Of course, few parts of it are very technical, but I think it makes so much sense, and it'll make so much, it'll make life easy for.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, and I see the possibility of replicability also in this kind of a model. So
Yes.
this is wonderful. Thank you so much, Karthik. Let's see. We had a third presentation, but unfortunately, the presenter could not be with us today due to some personal problems at home. There's been some emergency at her place. Someone's passed away. So I think we will end the first set of presentations here. I'm quickly looking at the chat box, trying to see if there are any questions for Karthik and Madhuri at this stage. And also it's an open space, so please feel free to ask questions to Karthik and Madhuri. Okay, I see one question for Madhuri. Can you give examples of how you have used this approach in evaluations? Rashmi ji is asking Madhuri. And Rashmi ji is also asking you, Karthik, which specific infrastructure did you find was more important? So if you can quickly respond. Madhuri, would you like to go first? Yeah.
Yes, I think I've used it wherever I design an evaluation, even if it seems very straightforward, and if the commissioner is asking for something that seems very linear. I sit with myself when I do these exercises, and I try to think, what are other ways that I can do this? What are other methods I can use? And then with tools, I try and think, how is this something that someone can engage with me? Not just I'm like a parasite trying to get some information. So I use it a lot on myself, more than others. But I think our role as facilitators is probably our biggest role. And there it's just, yes,
So
use it all the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Madhuri. Karthik, would you like to respond to Rashmi's question? Yeah.
So in terms of which infrastructure point is more impactful, right? So it varies across based on the type of response we are doing. For example, this particular survey on women, where we found that access to a bus stop, like because in rural areas mostly the mode of transportation is road. In cities it might be different, right? Might be metro also. In rural areas we found that access to bus stop has more effect on the participation in labor. But in a different study where we're doing like on enterprises in urban areas, in that what we found was that like the closer they are to the district headquarters, like the main district headquarters, right? The closer they are to the district headquarters, they are more likely to have better turnover and growth. So basically, it depends on what is a research question, what we want to understand from the research question. Based on that, the factors might vary accordingly. And currently, we're just capturing 4 investor points, but we hope to capture more in future. That might need more learning from our end also, but we're hopeful to cover more investor points.
Right. I see one hand raised, Isha Veda Singhe. Isha, would you like to?
Yes,
you can unmute.
Yeah. Actually, my question to Karthik, and I'm really happy to see the younger generation making such an innovative way of bringing the data. I mean, something that our generation as evaluators are getting older now, and we have not got that kind of facilities when we were doing. But a question to you, Karthik, and both. Now, you have this system. Now, your system is very useful not only for evaluation, for the private sector, industrial zone, because they need this kind of data. If you want to go into the rural sector, urban development, when you come to the government or private or any other thing. Now, what I saw is it's quite straightforward, but I think if you can open up further into this, especially get this disabled community informations, the facilities for the disabled community in the infrastructure. Those important factors are important in the rural sector. If you go into these bus stops, where the disabled can get into the bus, what kind of a bus stops are there, how long? And these are these are maybe it's little details, but the details are very important to any factor. Even the evaluations, we have to go out of box. We need this information. I think if you can do that further into this, I think it's very, very useful. And also give some qualitative information more than the number. It's important because sometimes some women say, no, I can walk up to 2.5 kilometers. I have no issue with that. Another house will say, no, I cannot walk 2.5 kilometers. So then why? One can, one cannot. Could be something to do with the health, could be something to do with something else. So this information is helping many industries, many enterprises. So I think you should take this little further and go into doing this data. And question to other one is, who is going to own this data? Who owns this data once you do it? That's the question I want to know. Is it available for everybody, or whether it belongs to a specific organization, or belongs to whom? Just tell me that. Thanks.
Thanks, Isha. I think I completely agree with you. So this is just a starting point that we're trying to do. Like we're starting with the small infrastructure points, but we aim to use better complicated infrastructure points that we want to analyze. And as you mentioned, quality information is very important here. So we're not trying to replace any primary survey with this infrastructure collection. What we want to do is we want to complement the primary research. So our main studies will be primary research. It might be quantitative research or qualitative research, but we want to complement the findings that we get from there through use of alternate data. So that is our aim here. And in terms of data ownership, so the data of infrastructure points is it's publicly available from Google APIs. So like anybody who wants to access the data, they can access the data from them. There's of course there's limit of daily usage, like up to a point you can get it free of charge. After that, the applicable charges apply, but that's quite a bit. Like you can download 1,200 data points a day. I think that's quite a good number for social researchers like us. So the data it belongs to Google, and anybody can access it, and it's like free of charge. That's something we can use. Yeah.
Thanks, Karthik.
Thank you, Karthik. There is one more question Ruba has asked in the chat box. He's asking Karthik to elaborate more on the methodology adopted. I think he needs probably. Ruba, are you there in the room? Maybe you can elaborate on your question more first for Karthik to be able to take it up. You can unmute and speak, Ruba, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you. This was a very good presentation. I'm not involved really in the practical, technical part of it, but I would like, when making use of Google, to know about what are the challenges as well. And maybe there are other qualitative study associated with this project. That is why I wanted him to elaborate on the methodology. Thank you.
Okay, so methodology is quite straightforward. So the base data is the Google Maps, right? So Google Maps, in Google Maps, basically we have keywords that we use for search, right? When you go to Google Maps, you search, let's say, shop near me, or some particular marketplace near me, right? These are the keywords that Google recognizes. So there's a list of 50 keywords that you can find in Google's website that uses in the map. So bus station, train station, police station, market, or any specific shop, right? If you want to stop grocery shop. So these are the keywords that the Google API recognizes. So basically what we do is through our coding. So we have done this coding in Python. Through this coding, we pull the data from the Google API. So Google APIs are it's a way of pulling data from other servers. Like if you want to pull data from external server, then you have to do it through APIs. And you basically have to go to Google's website, register yourself, and generate an API key. So that is the keyword. That key is like your username and password. So you just have to write your code in Python, mentioning, for example, I'm just giving an example, right? So let's say I want to collect data for, let's say, Chennai. So Chennai is a city in India. I want to collect data for that. So basically what I will do is in my coding, I will just mention the lat and long of the center of Chennai and say that from this point, and I'll mention radius, let's say 10 kilometers. So from this point, for 10 kilometer radius, I want all the bus stations that are there. So this is, I'm just giving the logic of my coding, and then I give my present API key for authentication. So based on this, the Google API will return me an CSV file that will have data of all the bus stops in that particular 10 kilometer radius with the bus stop name and then the latitude and longitude of the particular bus stop. So this is the first step of the data extraction. After this, what we will do is again, we write a code in Python where we have the latitude and longitude of the respondents and latitude and longitude of the bus stops. And using this code, what we do is we calculate the distance between these two using Google Maps. Like we have the by exact location of the respondent, exact location of the bus stop, then we calculate the distance between these two, and then take the minimum distance for each respondent, and then use that for the further analysis. So that's the basic methodology that we're following.
Right. Ruba, I hope that makes things a little clear. So if there are no more questions, are there any more questions? I'm just asking this openly to the floor now. Okay, I don't see any more hands or responses. Okay, there is one more last question, I think, from Alfred. He's asking, has the data or the information from the study been used for policy briefing?
So this is still an ongoing work. So we are still finalizing the data. So this will present to the policy stakeholders as once we finish it. So it's a complete package of study. So we have this supply side factors also, and we'll include this Google API thing, and we'll present it to the policyholders in the coming months. Yeah.
Right.
And it will be published in our website once we complete it, and you can refer to them. Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think with that last question, we'll probably end the first part of our innovative presentations here. Thank you so much, Karthik and Madhuri, for the wonderful presentations. Before inviting our next set of presenters, let me briefly set the context. Our next set of presenters are all development professionals with varying years of experience who have just completed ISST's flagship course on facilitating gender transformative evaluations, or FGTE 2.0, as we call it in short. Now, what is FGTE 2.0? This is a 10-week-long module-based course that focuses on bringing in the critical gender transformative lens when conducting evaluations. ISST has been running this online course since 2018, and in its updated version introduced last year, 35 participants from 6 countries have completed the course. Just a few weeks back, in fact, the last group of presentations were completed on 16th February. An important part of the course was its focus on group work, for which the participants were given 5 case studies having unique thematic areas: education, health, environment, and there were 2 case studies on livelihoods. Now, the idea was to encourage the innovative application of gender transformative concepts and approaches to then critically analyze the case studies and come up with evaluative solutions. So this was the whole exercise. And at the end of the 10-week-long coursework and group work, when they made their presentations, we were so fascinated by seeing the way they had applied some of the gender transformative concepts that we thought that, they are worth sharing on this international space that we have today. So what we have next are some of the key innovative gender transformative concepts that have been applied to the case studies. Each team, once again, will have 7 to 10 minutes to present, and I will give a call out at the end of 7 minutes. We will take up questions and comments at the end. With that, let me welcome the first team for their presentation on an education-themed case study where they have successfully applied some gender transformative approaches and frameworks. So let me invite Asmita Nayak Afrikawala, who's Manager Learning Assessments and Research at Schoolnet India Limited, and Ashima Mathur, who's Project Manager at Center for Responsible Business India. The floor is yours, Asmita and Ashima. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Hi everyone. So is the screen visible? Let me just...
Yes, it is.
It's visible.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank for giving us this opportunity to be a part of this platform, to the IIST team for guiding us all throughout this coursework and bringing us to this level. And going forward, the topic of our presentation is application of gender transformative evaluation approaches for inclusive program design. And the case study which was given to us was adolescent girls' life skill support and education. So we were a member of 5 people together. And today, I, Ashma Mathur, and my colleague Asmita Nayak will be presenting the case study. So to give you a brief about the program, the intervention basically, the intervention was located in Kalyanpuri. It's a backward urban slum locality situated in East Delhi, India. Predominantly, it is an underdeveloped locality with low-income families. And the children from these communities mostly attend government schools and colleges. So the issue is that the educational infrastructure which is available to these students is understaffed, overpopulated, and there is a lack of resources. So leading to a failure, or it doesn't addresses the unique needs of the adolescent boys and girls who are using or are part of that in schools or colleges. Realizing this inability of the educational institutions to provide safe space for the adolescents to grow, the project focused on creating an enabling environment through engaging with these adolescents, youth, and the communities at the whole. Uh, the objectives were 3 basically. One was creating a wider community base and reaching out to more children by engaging with them through different mediums and creating more opportunities for interaction. Secondly, focusing more on school dropouts and inclusion of these members of the community across class, caste, religion for greater diversity. Thirdly, for creating awareness among the adolescents and youth about the rights and a constant effort to build violence-free, safe environment. The types of intervention which were used were participatory approach, uh, developmental techniques, technical assistance, capacity building, educational support, life skills development, and awareness building. The target groups, as can be seen, is the adolescent girls and boys who were in the age group of 12 to 18 in Kalyanpuri location in Delhi. And a major chunk was school dropouts. The activities which were carried on ground were capacity building through vocational training, theater workshops, art workshops, community radio, peer support learning, educational support, and exposures to career counseling and other reading materials. Now I would request my colleague Asmita to go ahead.
So many of us work closely with development programs, and we know that the programs often strive to reach diverse subgroups of a population they cater to. While programs may succeed in reaching out to religious and ethnic minorities, people experiencing disability, or non-binary gender identities, very few programs are truly inclusive in nature. An inclusive program makes a conscious effort to understand and address multiplicity of contexts, needs, and realities experienced by the diverse subgroups of participants. In our presentation today, we propose a careful integration of gender analysis frameworks with program design as a means of achieving gender transformative social change. To make this agenda explicit, we demonstrate application of social relations and institutions framework for gender analysis by Naila Kabir to the theory of change of adolescent girls life skills support and education program in Delhi, India. Next slide, please. So applying social relations and institutional framework to the theory of change allows us to unearth the context in which this development program operates. It brings layers of marginalization adolescent girls and boys experience in varied social institutions like household, community, market, and state at the forefront of program design. Here, these include poverty and lack of guidance at family level, as you can see in the first column of this theory of change. Underdeveloped infrastructure with prevalence of gender stereotypes and gendered forms of violence at community level. limited employment opportunities in the market, and apathy of state. So in the context of these severely limiting life circumstances faced by adolescents in Kalyanpuri, Delhi, the program envisions optimal development of adolescent girls, boys, and youth with enhanced ability to deal with difficult life circumstances as the desired change, which you can see in the last column of this theory of change. So in order to achieve this goal, the program focuses on awareness building among adolescents, where they learn to identify roots of vulnerability and marginalization they experience in the existing social institutions. The program aims to equip adolescents to work towards desired change by defining key change processes. To cite an example, at the community level, TOC articulates the change process as adolescent girls and boys question community norms and practices and voice their opinion on inequalities and violence they face. The theory of change then determines the actions required for this change process as equipping adolescent girls and boys to identify gendered form of inequalities and violence, and equipping them to use non-threatening media for gender sensitization within community. The gender transformative potential of the program is emphasized in this theory of change by focusing on change, deliberately moving away from standard terminologies of outputs, outcomes, and impact. This theory of change will eventually guide evaluation of this program. The evaluation will focus on examining how far the program has contributed to changing power relations within social institutions based on gender and other identities. Now I request Dr. Ashima to take you through the key evaluation questions that we have designed for this case study.
Thank you, Asmita. Yeah, so going forward, evaluation questions, which are a very critical part of any evaluation approach or the project we undertake. So we used a longitudinal evaluation design to assess the program as it focuses on bringing out transformative change in the existing power relations. The evaluation questions which we suggested could guide the evaluation were: how successful is the program in ensuring active participation of diverse groups of adolescent girls, boys, and youth from the community? Which groups, the most vulnerable ones, not just limiting to women, but the disabled, the minority, and other groups, benefit the most, and why and how? Who are left out and or have lower engagement with the program? Do adolescents and youth, especially girls from lower socioeconomic, disabled, marginalized groups, practice agency to make decisions pertaining to their education, work, marriage, and matters concerning their life and community? How long the gains will last? Are adolescent girls, boys, and youth from varied groups aware of their rights and able to assert themselves? Do they recognize and resist gender violence forms? What are the key barriers and success factors and facilitators in the process of change? Lastly, we thought that there might be some unintended outcomes as well, positive or negative. So in that case, is the intervention in any way causing a negative impact on the participants? For example, backlash from the families or the community for participating in this program. So these were some of the questions which we felt should be part of the evaluation design. And yeah, so that is the short presentation which we wanted to. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Asmita and Ashima. Once again, I mean, I've of course seen this before, but once again, thank you so much. A wonderful presentation, wonderful engendering of questions. The whole application of this social relations framework to the way you have applied it to the framing of the TOC. Very, very interesting, very, very innovative. You have actually sort of unpacked the different layers that are there in this particular intervention so beautifully. So thank you so much for that. We will take up questions. I'm sure there'll be some and probably also in the chat box. But let's wait for that, and let's have the next group. The next group of presenters are from the environment group case study. We have Arundhita Bhanjeo, who's a researcher with Pradhan, and we have Sheetal Sharma, who's social safeguard specialist with Arya Society India. So over to you, Arundhita and Ashima. Sorry, Sheetal.
Is that visible, Bijita?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Nita, and today my team member Sheetal and I will present a case study, as Bijita shared, on environment and climate change. This is from a project in the Gandaki River Basin in Nepal. So I'll start with giving a brief context of the river basin. The basin lies in the central Himalayan region, also extending to China and India. This basin region in Nepal that we are studying has a wide variation in elevation and topography, and hence a wide variation in climate and vegetation. Communities there therefore face diverse challenges to determine livelihood strategies and adaptive capacities. What adds to the vulnerability in the region is that it has high poverty, it has low socioeconomic indicators, and is susceptible to a range of natural hazards. So the project that we studied aims to improve climate resilience of vulnerable communities and ecosystems in the river basin. Out of these three components that the project had, we studied the community resilience aspect, the first aspect of the project, from a gender transformative lens. So theoretically, what we found is that the project aims to kind of build an equitable society as it identifies women, Dalits, and poor ethnic groups as the most vulnerable and as the target beneficiaries of the project. However, gender blind, as there are no mechanisms including vulnerable populations in the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation process, and just considers them as beneficiaries. So here's a theory of change that we propose for the project, which the project currently does not have a theory of change. So we start with assumptions when we start are that vulnerabilities are experienced differently by different people. So resilience also is a dynamic concept and needs to be continuously reconfigured. Our team's role is that of a facilitator in this whole process, and we are conducting the first review in the process. The project started in 2020, and we assume that there's still scope for iteration. So that was like our case. The problem or the situation to be improved is that there is the women and other vulnerable groups are excluded from the decision-making process throughout the process of the project. There is a lack of acknowledgement of their voices and the contextual knowledge of these vulnerable groups, the local knowledge around climate resilience. And then there are lack of climate resilient infrastructure. So we also kind of listed these different stakeholders, which involve the central government there, provincial and local government, NGOs, and also the three kind of categories of, I mean, we don't want to make the three categories homogeneous, but just for the ease of presentation, these are the community. And so there are some activities that the project has designed, which is mostly around building agroforestry practices, climate resilient, construction of nature-based structures, promotion of drought and flood tolerant crop varieties, and increasing water availability and water use efficiency. We also propose another embedded activity which comprises of mobilizing the communities, listening to marginalized perspectives, around what is resilience, how do people actually experience resilience, and defining and redefining the concept of resilience. And not only that, but participation of the community in the monitoring and evaluation of the project. So the outputs that, we've just, some of the outputs that we have envisaged is that there'll be large scale implementation and adoption of the climate resilient agroforestry and livelihood improvement actions through this process. And then the water availability and water use efficiency interventions will be implemented. And then these structures will be accessible to vulnerable groups. Like these structures will be in the names of the women of the vulnerable groups and will not be decided by dominant groups. So the outcomes that we envisage are that there'll be a better adaptation to climate change. The vulnerable groups will have better access or ownership to resources and assets. And there'll be an enhanced participation of the community in decision making, which will then lead to an equitable, inclusive and resilient communities as the impact of the project, which the project also envisages. So I'll invite Sheetal, my team member, to take you through the evaluation questions, which we have designed based on the Gender at Work framework.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Sheetal. Basically, the evaluation framework which we plan to use is the Gender at Work framework. And the reason we want to use this framework because we want to see that there is a change in terms of both the power relation. We want to see that there is an access to resources through this, basically through this project. So this evaluation questions will center around whether there has been increase in visibility, skills, the bargaining power of women, both at the individual level and also at the community level. We want to see that the groups and community groups that has been formed through this project, whether they have been strengthened and whether these groups are able to really claim for their rights and resources underneath this project. And also at the community level, both in terms of formal, informal and the formal, we want to see that there's a change in access and control over resources. Since this project is basically around livelihood, building livelihoods of people, and that also marginalized people. So we want to see that these marginalized people are not left out when it comes to the schemes and programs of the government. So we want to see that they have access to these schemes and programs. And basically, these marginalized people come forward and access the schemes. And that is what the evaluation questions will center around both individual and at the community level. And we want to uncover opportunities and barriers and see that the desired, the outcome of community resilience, resilience is answered through the evaluation questions. Next. And the principles that will guide the framework, we are using both the feminist principles of inquiry and social justice and participatory approach. Again, the reason for using both these principles is that since we know that feminism, when it comes to feminism or feminist theory, it's not just only about women, but it's the whole ecosystem. And basically in a project which involves the marginalized population as the key beneficiaries, we want to see the extent to which the power relations has also improved. So we believe that the combination of both the feminist principles and participatory approach will really help to frame questions, which really helps to understand how much the project has benefited to these people. Last slide. And the key takeaways which we as a team feels that, one framework or one principle cannot guide the evaluation. So when it comes to community resilience and applying a gender framework, we believe that if there's a combination of 2 or 3 principles, and also since we have used Gender at Work framework in our case study, but again, we also feel that the framework of institutional, social and institutional, there's another framework on institutional gender in institutions. So even if that framework is also used together, it will help to strengthen the evaluation questions and also the outcomes. And definitely the participation of the community. As an evaluator, we cannot define how this evaluation process will be, or we cannot all alone define. We have to have the participation of community and other stakeholders in this whole process of designing the questions, in designing the plan, and also in data analysis and the interpretation of the data. And number 3, as we say, that indicators to monitoring and evaluation has to embed the principles of equity and social justice. Because this case study as a whole, again, I'm saying that we are focusing on community resilience, and community is not a homogeneous group. In our case, we see community as a heterogeneous group where we see different intersectionality around caste, around class, around power, so, and again, around gender. So there are different intersectionalities, and we feel that if we really want to see that how this project is impacting these different groups of people, we cannot talk in isolation. We have to really have these principles of intersectionality attached in our evaluation framework. And definitely, since the case study is on climate change, it has a differential impact on women and marginalized community. So definitely the principles of intersectionality and social justice has to guide the whole evaluation. That's all from my end. Arundhita, is there anything you want to add?
No, that is, thank you. Thank you, Vijita.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arundhita, Sheetal. Very, very fascinating presentation, very, very fascinating analysis of this particular case study on climate resilience. Yes, communities, participatory approaches, and the beautiful application of gender at work framework. Thank you so much for that. I see a few questions already, but I think we will keep it for the end. So yeah, in the meantime, if the presenters would like to take a look at the chat box, maybe you can go through and be ready with it. Right, so let me move to the next group quickly. The next group of presenters will make a presentation on a livelihoods case study from Sri Lanka. And we have Pasang Bhutia, Program Manager, International Justice Mission, and Ritu Gupta, Program Manager, Gender at Work. Pasang and Ritu, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pasang Bhutia, and I'm joined by my group member Ritu today to present an approach that we have suggested in terms of designing an evaluation for an assignment that we got. The title of the case study is Supporting Livelihoods for Vulnerable Population in North and Eastern Region of Sri Lanka Post the Civil War. So just to give you a quick context, the target population are basically people who have been displaced from land, homes, and belongings in this region. And it comprises of war widows, women-headed households, ex-combatants, youth at risk, and people with disabilities. The area of intervention are 3 districts in the north and eastern region of Sri Lanka, which are Jaffna, Kilinochchi, and Mullai Tivu. I hope I've done justice to the pronunciation there. So before going on to the other slide, I just wanted to quickly give you a background, in-depth background of the population, the target population. So World Food Program did an assessment in 2011. And according to the assessment, the findings were that of the 1.7 million people that they found to be food insecure, 78% of them were from north and eastern part of Sri Lanka. And it also showed signs of indebtedness and asset depletion among the population. It also said that there were very less access to labor market opportunities, and the family depended on low and erratic incomes. The assessment also found that
The target population had irregular, non-skilled labor activities, and above all, the women-headed households had an added burden of supporting their households and also caring for their children and rebuilding their life after the conflict. So from the reading of the case study, the inference that we have is that the intervention by the NGO was gender blind, and another significant gap that we saw in the intervention was that it did not take into account the trauma of the people who actually went, who were affected by the conflict. So in the evaluation design, we are trying to bring aspects of making this more gender inclusive, and also hoping that the integration of trauma is there. So over to you, Ritu.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So we are going to follow the American Evaluation Association's principles to approach this whole intervention. The principles like do no harm, no conflict of interest, developing a contextual understanding of the area of intervention. We'll try to imbibe a culture of evaluative thinking by establishing a steering or reference committee with equal representation from the community, especially foregrounding the voices of women, creating a safe spaces for all voices and perspectives, developing data collection tools with a feminist lens with an emphasis on the context, informed consent forms, developing a team charter, which should include some shared values, how we are going to make the decision, or how are we going to work together, maintaining confidentiality of the data collected, and share the findings of the evaluation study with the community and collect their feedback and recommendation. We are going to collect data. So the data collection will be focusing on the both quantitative and the qualitative aspect. However, we are going to, because as Pasang mentioned, that we are going to also deal with the population which is being affected by the conflict. So more often than not, collecting data through qualitative methods such as FGDs and in-depth interviews are not enough. So we are also going to conduct or include conducting some kind of, personal interviews in person, maintaining full confidentiality. So that's also going to be very important for us. And the data that we will collect will be analyzed using the gender at work analytical framework. Next slide, Pasang. So here, the questions, the engendering questions, what we are going to focus, the evaluation approach that we are taking on this intervention is of relevance and effectiveness. And the questions that we have identified are focused on gender at work analytical, are based on gender at work analytical framework, and we are going to analyze it using this framework. And I will call upon my colleague Pasang to take us through the questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ritu. Sorry, my screen froze.
Should I share, Pasang?
Let me try again, Ritu.
Okay.
Oops.
I can just go quickly.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Ritu. So as Ritu stated, the two criteria that we are focusing on is relevance and effectiveness, and the questions that we have up on the screen. The first one says whether the intervention was most relevant for the target community, which is of course the women-headed households, the war widows, people with disabilities, youth at risk, and the ex-combatants. The second question is focused on understanding whether all the marginalized and vulnerable groups identified before the implementation of the project benefited from the project activities. And this is more to understand the power dynamics and the compounding discrimination here. And we also wanted to understand whether the relevant stakeholders, in this case, the NGOs, implementing partners, the evaluating team, had an understanding or were trained on gender, power dynamics, and intersectionality domains. And lastly, like I said earlier on, we wanted to understand whether the stakeholders were cognizant of the trauma that the people had gone through as being exposed to the conflict, and whether they made an effort to be sensitive to the needs of the beneficiaries. Next, Ritu. The second set of questions is for the criteria effectiveness, and through this criteria, we would like to understand whether the benefit and the challenges of the project, how was it different for men versus women, and whether there has been a change in the perceived status of women in the community, whether women have been, have access to increased decision-making spaces, whether people with disabilities have equal opportunities to local services, labor markets, and opportunities to decision-making, whether there has been an increased access to land for vulnerable groups, especially the target community, and access to market and producer companies headed by women. And are the women able to decide on the price of the products they are selling? Do they have control over earning and the spending? And lastly, if this intervention has brought about any change in the government policy and rules pertaining to women owning land. So over to you, Ritu.
Thank you, Basang. So finally, the findings from this evaluation, we will be creating a dissemination plan, and we will be sharing the findings from this evaluation with the primary intended users, and who will be the funders, decision makers from NGOs, and any other stakeholders who can use the findings from the evaluation to integrate a gender lens in future implementation of the project. As in the beginning, Basang was mentioning that through our analysis and study, we found that this is a gender blind intervention. So it is very important that we integrate a gender lens. And it is very important that the stakeholders, they integrate a gender lens if they are trying to also replicate this similar kind of program somewhere else in Sri Lanka. The next would be the community, especially the women, would use the findings of the evaluation to provide recommendation on how the project implementation can be further strengthened and made more gender inclusive. And finally, different kinds of ministries. So Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Skill Development, Department of Social Services, they can use the findings to inform as well as integrate a gender lens to their future interventions. So with this, I'd like to conclude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ritu and Basang. Thank you so much for this presentation. There are so many comments in the chat box, and all you presenters will be very happy to hear that there is a demand for these presentations now. They all want to read it more carefully. They all want to learn from it. As I keep saying, you have actually applied the gender concepts really, really well. So thank you so much for all the effort that all of you have put in. Next, I think we should move to the next group now. 2 more groups remaining. So let us finish all the presentations and then open it up for Q&A. So let me welcome the next group, which is a health case study, health-based case study. And for that, we have Vaishali Bose, who is a PhD scholar at IIT Kharagpur, India. Bishwajit Mukherjee, who is a technical specialist, Population Council. And Sheena Kapoor, who is an independent M&E consultant. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope my screen is visible and I am audible. Our theme was health and nutrition, and the case study we have been assigned to was community ownership on child health. We are there 4 group members all are present here, and it's a pleasure for us to present today here. The background of the case study is here. The central problem was to increase immunization uptake amongst 90 villages in Assam. The intervention period was distributed in 3 phases from 2017 to 2020. The objectives per phase was quite different but quite integrated. In phase 1, the objective was to increase immunization coverage. In phase 2, it was to identify the issues important to community members. And in phase 3, it was to improve community ownership. The project approach adopted in this case was SALT CLCP. And the key results was mainly the power shift towards community from the facilitator and the improved community ownership, and most importantly, the change in pattern of gender roles. Okay, moving to Vishwajit. Over to Vishwajit.
Yeah, thank you, Vaishali. So as Vaishali said, this project was implemented in 3 phases with 3 different set of objectives interrelated with each other. And the important thing is that the community as at the core of this project implementation. So this project, this TOC, as a team, we have thought on this TOC on different like levels of intervention, individual, community, and at the stakeholder level. So this, and we have incorporated the gender barriers, the gender at work framework in this, about the community resilience, how gender barriers had an implication on the project, and what are the lack of visualization of their status after a few years, or what are the benefits they are going to get in health and sanitation. So basically this there are few assumptions in this theory of change. We have incorporated the indicators as outcome indicators also, which we want to see at the end of the project, and in between of the project also, like preliminary output and the intermediate output in this. So it's the selection of facilitators. We'll go with the making a team and how to build on that team to reach the community. And so the selection facilitators were the core of the implementation in this project. So one of the basic idea was to apply the SALT approach, which is like support, appreciate, listen, and then transfer the learnings to the community and learn from the community. So it's a circular thing. So from the, and who will do that is an important factor. So the facilitators, I mean selection of the facilitators, who will join us, who are we as a community meetings. I mean, so where do we want to be? I mean, so what do we want from this project, and where do we want to be? So from there, the hiring, training of the facilitators, and an assumption is that with the training of the facilitators and the community change agents will be motivated to implement the project, and based on their learnings, based on that approach, SALT approach, and the gender at work framework, like development of gender sensitive training materials in their local language. So with these, we will revise the strategies time to time. Community members will self-assess their progress and then understand the process and changes, which is very important. So in this, we have kept our preliminary output as enhanced facilitation skills of the community members, of the female community members also, the facilitators and the change agents, which will enhance their problem solving skills, build the aspiration of what they want to be in the coming in the coming year, means future, which will expose them to other related issues to health and sanitation and hygiene. If the stakeholder support from implementers is also very important. So we have kept this regular handholding support to a time frame, and then support and facilitate in accessibility and accessibility of how to reach, how to increase that reach in terms of infrastructure, in terms of accessibility and accessibility, how the gender concepts come in this, and how they can access the facilities. Because in that this case study, which was in Assam, it was like male, it was there that male thinks that this is the female has the responsibility of taking it to the immunization centers, and it is their work to go for the immunization. So these will help us for improved gender sensitive approach of changing gender attitudes and informed decision making. And this decision making will be a combined decision making among within the community as within the family also. And the goal, as we said, that it is increased immunization coverage. This in gender change in gender attitude will also help in increasing the improved self efficacy. In terms, it will also result the greater involvement of the community and increased community ownership. When the community will own this process, when the individuals will own this process, they finally will go to the community as a whole. And if they own the process, these goals can be achieved of like increased service accessibility and increased immunization coverage. Over to Sheena. Thank you.
Thank you, Viswajit. So while analyzing the case study, we felt that social relation framework would help us understand the impact created at the individual, household, community, and the state level better. So while analyzing, we felt that there were positive changes in gender norms that could be seen at all the 5 levels. At the individual level, there was a significant change in individuals' knowledge or self-awareness with respect to their child's immunization. At the household level, there was a drastic change in the division of work resources among the men and women of the household. There were triggered conversations on gender roles in child health, that immunization is not just the responsibility of the women of the house. Even other members of the household are equally responsible. All of this led to men started helping in the household chores, which was a drastic change for the community as well. There was a power shift from external agency to the community on child health, as community took ownership in design, implementation, and self-measurement on child health. Community took action on other issues like safe drinking water, hygiene and sanitation, school dropouts. They were not just restricted to their children's immunization. At the state level as well, it enabled villages to create a linkage to existing schemes, which was quite useful for the community, and the project moved way beyond just restricting itself to child immunization. Now I would like Vaishali to take over.
Am I audible? Okay. To wrap this up, the concluding remarks we have is that SALT CLCP approach is a very dynamic and not easy process to evaluate. It is almost about the stimulation that the community is having for they are the people who are deciding what they need, how they need, and why they need. And so this evaluation process needs both inductive and deductive thinking. So the method is also should be mixed method, and the tools should also be qualitative and quantitative both. The approaches we have tried to follow is the realist approach, participatory approach, and feminist approach. So the principles would be according to the approaches only. One thing that we would like to convey is that one single framework or one single method may not be sufficient for describe or evaluate or analyze this kind of case study where the process is very dynamic and very complex to understand. So that may need other frameworks as well. But one thing is for sure that a relatively long project period is very much necessary to evaluate the outcomes. And in case of such SALT CLCP approach, our focus should be on the community's ownership and self-measurement in the evaluation process. The three key principles that we have figured out as a team and we would like to follow in our other programs also is congruence, collectiveness, and continuity. Thank you, IST team, and this platform also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vaishali, Sheena, Bishwajit. Another wonderful presentation. There are some very good comments in the chat box for your presentation. And I think this one particularly, in the use of participatory approaches, in the use of SALT CLCP for evaluation, for a health immunization project like this one, I think you have captured the nuances beautifully through your presentation. So thank you so much for that. And we will wait for the comments and questions during the Q&A. So finally, we welcome our last group of presenters. We have Shanmugan Manoharan, who's a rural development specialist at World Bank, and Meher Soni, who's assistant manager KPMG India. And their presentation is also a livelihoods presentation. It's the Bhutan case study. Please, the floor is all yours, Meher.
Yeah, I hope the screen is visible.
It is, it is.
Yeah, so thank you for this. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this exciting opportunity. I'll jump right in. This case study, Build Bhutan project, is about supporting young people gain employment in the construction sector and bringing systemic changes within the sector. We have assumed that this study has been commissioned by the Bhutan ministry, the labor ministry, and that they are open to participate and reflect. We are using a gendered utilization focused evaluation. Although this is a livelihoods program, the TOC is gender blind. It does not embed an intersection lens of gender, religion, class, and assumes young people to be a homogeneous group. As evaluators, we are aiming to create a space for reflection to bring to the surface how gender aspects influences such interventions. We intend to do this through participatory approaches that my colleague will discuss through the presentation. We have envisioned a TOC results chain that basically defines what the intervention is trying to achieve and how to achieve in a particular context. This is a backward planning approach to map the pathway to achieve desired outcome. We have a problem statement, which the construction sector is hampered by labor shortages, unprofessional standards, and unappealing employment scenario with an urgent necessity to skill and reskill labor displaced by the pandemic. The activities include registration of laborers, training, professionalization, and development of a social security system. Outputs are improved wages, leveraging training institutions, social security system, and establishment of specialized firms. The outcomes are employing trained labor and transformational advances in job availability and construction sector in general. With this, I would like to invite my colleague to take the discussion forward. Over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Shan. So for the purpose of this evaluation, to understand the evaluation questions, we took the gender at work framework. And the reasons for choosing this was that one, this is at the workplace, it's about livelihood. So we thought this was appropriate. And the second is that it is a policy, a policy it's a government intervention. So in that situation, also this framework is appropriate. Now I'll come to quadrant 1, which is change in access and control over resources. That is individual formal quadrant. So with this evaluation, we would, try and check access to the project, enrollment, successful participation, training, change in income levels, then, the differentiation and change in income levels, then if men and women are, part of the project, and if women are earning the money, then is the control in their hands? So is the access to resources in their hands? Then another aspect would be leadership or decision making. So one of the parts of this project is, to also have very specialized groups in the construction sector. So those would have leaders and decision makers. So we would check if are women represented there, or are any other lobbying groups there, are women representatives over there or not at industry level. Another thing is that comparing dropout rates between men and women, as well as the joining rate and wage difference. So essentially looking at the access and control over resources. I'll move to the second quadrant now, which is change in laws, policies, resource allocation. That is the formal systematic quadrant. Now we look at access now again from the government point of view. Is there a barrier to entry? Are there any efforts made to ensure that the working environment is friendly towards women? So addressing their needs differently. Then what is the spend of the project, disaggregated women? And do any of the specialized groups include women? So this is more from a policy and resource allocation point of view. Then the third quadrant is changes in cultural norms and practices. That is the systemic and informal quadrant. Now, this is, even if there's no formal barrier to entry, there are certain norms in society, there are certain norms in the sector and the industry itself. So here we check, okay, even if men and women are joining the organization or the industry, is the kind of work that they do is different. This might not be formal, but then is that being replicated? Is there a gender division of labor? What kind? Is there a power differential? Is one gender picking only one kind of job? So that kind of evaluation question. And the last is changes in belief, attitudes, and values, the informal individual quadrant. So here we talk about acceptability. Is construction seen as a sector where is it a last option? Is it only because it is a COVID scenario that we're looking at this option as a career option? Or is that something that they've managed to change in the industry? Is that something that they've managed to change, systemically? belief and attitude, not just formal sort of participation. So in terms of evaluation, this is what we were looking at. Shan, can you move to the next slide? Are you, so I'll go over this very, very briefly. This is basically how we would look at participatory approach. So when we look at these questions, we try to make it as participatory as possible. So we identified various points at which participants would get to know each other, then together collectively decide, okay, what is the kind of change we are looking at, what are the spaces to discuss. So just I won't go into every point of this, but this is something that we had thought of as well, to make this as reflective as possible, considering that considering that this is at the policy level. So yeah, that's it from my end. I'll hand over back to Vijita.
Thank you so much, Meher and Shanmugam. Wonderful presentation. Very, very interesting points once again, and how you have applied the different frameworks to this whole analysis in the Build Bhutan project. I can see a lot of comments in the chat box. I won't say there are too many questions, but there is one from Francisco Reyes. He's asking, how was the significant change in the individual's knowledge of self-awareness regarding the immunization of their children evidenced? I think this is specifically for the health group presentation, and I already see some responses. But does that make it clear, Francisco, or would you like more clarification on that question? Because we have Vaishali here, we have other members of the team. So in case you want more clarification, this is the time we can seek it from the group members who are present. Okay, I think that makes it clear. Thank you so much for putting those comments in the chat box, Sheena, Bishwajit, and Vaishali. There was one more comment that I saw. There was some discussion with regard to how TOCs are supposed to be designed and all that. So if you, I saw Isha making a point. So Isha, would you like to make your point here for everybody? You are yourself an experienced evaluator, I know. So Isha, are you still there? Okay, not sure if Isha is still around. Right, so not many comments. So let me see if there are no more questions. You can even raise your hands at this stage and ask questions. These were all case studies. These are real case studies, but these were given to the different groups to just analyze. And it was part of the group work presentation exercise to see how well they apply these concepts, how innovatively they applied these concepts. And as you all saw, I mean, they have really done a great job out of it. So and there was one comment on, if we can make the case study presentations available, we will try and see how best we can curate them, and we can maybe, generate a link and share it widely on other, I don't know how we are going to really disseminate it, but we need to, at ISST level, we need to think and find a way for that. This is the open space for sharing innovation. So now I invite anybody from, the participants that we still have. There are still 60 in the room. So any one of you from your own experiences, if there are any innovations, any interesting experiments that you have done or you have come across, and would you like to share anything from that with all of us here? I'll really appreciate some to at least come up and share. I know it's a room full of professionals and evaluators out there, so please. Yes, please raise your hands if you want to share something, or even if you want to just sort of comment on the presentations that you've seen here. Okay, Baishali has a hand raised. So yes, please, Baishali, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I have worked with adolescents for a long period. And in that case, I have seen that it may be qualitative as evaluator. It is definitely qualitative, but I have seen a very interesting and intriguing effect on the adolescents while working with art methods, different art methods, art techniques, like applying theater performance as their engagement and doing evaluation from that, applying art, visual art methods, like having a discussion or having practical artworks, doing that. Various interesting things have come up during those sessions. And actually gender, through, if we're looking through gender lens, I have seen adolescents very being very interested in those methods. And so yes, these are very unique concepts and these are very new age concepts, like coming up very recently. But yes, definitely interesting to try more and more and engage people through different art techniques and art evaluation methods.
Thank you so much, Vaishali. Very, very important. And thank you so much for sharing that. In fact, Madhuri, are you still there? Madhuri is actually an expert and she has been using arts-based approaches, I know. So would you like to share your two-piece, Madhuri? Your experience in using art techniques?
Yeah, I must say that since I've started not just using art, but also creative thinking, it really opens a new world. It really deepens how you engage with people. It shifts from words to images, just ways to express. So yes, I'm the big advocate for visual and creative methods and tools.
Madhuri, if I may ask you, how do you analyze, let's say we are using some drawings, free art. Let's say we are asking children to just engage in some free art and express themselves. Okay. So then once they have done that, how do you really analyze that data later? I'm interested in knowing that.
I think the one aspect is that we don't analyze the data later. We analyze the data during the process. And that's also a mind shift, is that often the drawings is just a tool to engage with the people, whether it's children or. The other thing is that it gives an opportunity where they give immediate feedback. So for one example is working with children, we wanted to find out how it can be more responsive to children's needs. And just giving them a bag full of interesting things like little tiles and pom-poms, asking them to build their community, and then asking them afterwards, how would you change it to make it better? And I mean, you can also do it backwards and say, how was it before the program? But so it's not analyzing it afterwards. It's really analyzing it, commenting on it, and getting feedback.
Right. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. And Vaishali, how did you use, in your adolescent program, how did you use your arts base? What are some of the approaches you used, if I may ask?
Yes, what I have used is there are different. Since I am working as an art therapist also. I used to employ different techniques like body mapping techniques, and there are other tools like which emphasizes on like concentration or their academic skills, their vocabulary skills, their reading writing skills, etc. Also, one example I can give here that. In a North Bengal project, I was using this art technique on a project on water hygiene sanitation. And there were a group of boys and girls, adolescents of different ages from different social backgrounds and different private schools, government schools, and also those children who were not part of any school, the dropout children. And the task was simple. It was asked to draw their school and home bathrooms or toilets. What are the things there are they have seen? So analyzing, as Madhuri have very righteously said, that it is kind of very on spot evaluation. It is not like afterwards we are quantitatively analyzing something. From there we can choose like what colors they are choosing, what are the items they are prioritizing in their drawings, what are the items they are they are living out, what are the items they are thinking that there should be. And how there are several techniques, like what are the strokes, what are the colors, what are the methods, what the timing they are using while doing the task. All these things we capture, we do the field note kinds of thing. And then the analysis is kind of more descriptive, more qualitative, more in-depth. And it is also true for the performance related techniques also. In case of applying theater techniques, there is also body mapping techniques and expression or emotion related techniques. Through that also we can like map several things which are more qualitative.
Yes. Right. Thank you so much, Vaishali, for sharing it in so much detail. I see one hand up, Asmita. Asmita, would you like to share something?
Oh, yes. Again, I would like to share one of the experiences of using art-based forms to do internal evaluation of a program. So I worked with a non-profit organization, Mumbai Mobile Crashes in Mumbai, which has daycare centers on active construction sites to take care of the children of these laborers who live on the site itself in makeshift in a makeshift kind of a setting. So there we did this exercise wherein we asked these school-going children to imagine that what would happen if MMC daycare center did not exist on the construction site where they lived, and to portray that through their drawings. And such amazing visualizations came up, and we could have never even imagined what that daycare center meant for each of the child, and all the different things they brought up, from physical safety on construction site to the affection and love they got from the childcare workers at the daycare center. So in case you all are interested, I think this has been published and it is available with Mumbai Mobile Crashes as in 2 versions, in English, in Hindi agar MMC nahi hota to, and in English as a diary of this evaluation exercises. So all beautiful paintings and what that picture or painting meant for that particular child, and it's a awesome kind of a resource to have a look at. I would recommend all to look at it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Yes, I can imagine that would be such a rich resource, right? To just have it visually represented by all these children, their voices in the visual form. Lovely. We also have some comments in the chat box. Ishika Bansal, she's saying drawings can act as an important tool to analyze the gender perspectives of children. And as Madhuri mentioned, this has to be done while we are in the process. Very true. So I think it's wonderful to just know that so many of you here are already using arts-based approaches. And I'm excited at this opportunity. I'm going to probably reach out to some of you who have already shared your experiences and learn more from you, because this is something that really excites me. I also paint, I do watercolor, and this is so wonderful. I mean, how can I use it more for my evaluation work is something that I would really want to learn. So are there any more comments? Are there, because we still have 15 minutes. So if anyone wants to share anything else, any more innovations, any other methods that you have been using and you would want to share it with everyone, all us evaluators sitting here today? Okay, so should we end it here if we don't have Any more questions? Randike?
Yes, Vijita, if there is no, we can move forward. So, yeah.
I think unfortunately one of our presenters could not be present. Otherwise, this would have been just on time. The wrap-up would have been absolutely on time, but one of our presenters could not be there today. So Dr. Rashmi, I invite Dr. Rashmi to please pay the vote of thanks. Dr. Rashmi, over to you.
So it had been really a wonderful experience today, and it had been almost 2 hour interaction and learning session, which we all, I hope, enjoyed very much. Innovations and experiments have been stimulating and thought-provoking, and I am sure that some of these will find wider application and replicated or adapted in future. I thank all the innovators for giving us a chance to go through their journey they had with their innovations. Actually, it is very interesting to note that young and emerging evaluators are coming forward with their innovations. The students of gender force presented wonderful thoughts. We have heard sector-specific, country-specific experiences and so on. I really appreciate their scale and speed of learning, I must say, and they will be the torch bearers very shortly, I'm sure, and invite them to join our Evaluation Committee of India so that they could get a prominent space in the organization and they could bring new thoughts to the organization, and we could organize several other things together. I also thank Vijita for wonderful moderation. I thank all the participants of the session for making it a very lively and learning experience for all of us. My thanks are also due to the production and communication team who worked very hard to make the session a success. Once again, I thank you all, and join us in the last closing session, which will start at 4:30. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.